Hi there, I'm E, and this is not your father's 2 cents. College is expensive. Student loan debt now totals nearly $1.8 trillion, according to data from the Federal Reserve Board of Governors. In fact, nearly 9 million borrowers missed their first payment when payments resumed last fall, according to data from the Department of Education. After hearing all of this, it might sound like getting a college degree is out of reach, but it's not. Joining me today is Lori Gross. She's a financial advisor with Outlook Financial Center located in Troy, Ohio. She's licensed to offer investment advice and insurance products and has more than 20 years of experience in the financial services industry. Hi, Lori.
Good morning, Alyssa. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you for being here. So, college, it's not cheap. And especially in today's world, I think a lot of people are struggling to figure out how to pay for it, or they're really burdened with debt. Mm-hmm. Have you encountered any clients who have come in and kind of had, concerns about paying for their child's college, or maybe don't know where to start?
Oh, absolutely. I actually just met with a young couple the other day they have 2 young children, quite young, as a matter of fact. They're only like 7 months and 2 years old, but they're already looking at how do we start planning for college. And we have another meeting scheduled in about 2 weeks where we're going to sit down and go over all the different vehicles that they could look at. Most of what they've heard is about 529 plans, because that's what everybody hears about. Nobody really realizes that there are many other options out there available to them.
Maybe for people who don't know what a 529 savings plan is, can you kind of explain how it works and what those funds can be used for?
So a 529 plan is essentially, it's a state-sponsored investment account. Every state out there, I believe now, has one, and they hold assets that are invested in the market in mutual funds, ETFs, just like a IRA or a non-qualified account would. The difference is they have some tax advantages to them that will allow you to utilize those funds for college and get tax breaks for them. The funds are transferable. So when you open a 529 plan, it's open in the name of the child. So you got let's say you have 2 or 3 children and you have opened a 529 plan for the first child. If that child ends up not going to college, then those funds are transferable to the next child. You can just change the name on the account and transfer it over to them. And then that is still money that can be used for college. There are some cons that go along with 529 plans, though. There are some penalties associated for non-educational withdrawals. You lose those tax benefits if you don't use them for education.
What are some of the other options that people have in addition to the 529s?
Well, aside from the 529 plan, I mean, there's grants and scholarships available out there for people, and the kids have to put in a little bit of work for that. But when it comes to investment accounts, because the 529 plan is an investment account, there's also non-qualified accounts where you could open up a UTMA account for your child and start planning that way and investing it. The benefit of that would be that it is, aside from being used for college, it could be used for anything else. If you have a child that decides not to go to college, they want to go into a trade right out of school, they could utilize those funds for something else. You can use cash value life insurance. You can use the cash value of that for your college funding expenses. The beauty of that would be if you're using it, if it's your life insurance policy, it's your money, it's your savings. And so, if your child decides not to go to college, then that is just a supplement for your retirement down the road, or other things that you want to do. You may have bucket list items you want to take care of and knock off. But utilizing it as life insurance, it kind of has a 2-pronged factor there, because if something happens to you prematurely, then that it has a death benefit to it. So it also, as long as you've got your beneficiary set up correctly, it takes the place of what would have been that college fund. You can utilize a Roth plan as well. You can, if your child is working, if they've got a part-time job through school and everything, if your child's working and they have income, you can put a Roth account opened in your child's name. Otherwise, you could use your own Roth account. You can actually pull out your contributions to a Roth without any penalty prior to being retirement age.
Do you see like a lot of parents kind of coming in and getting that head start?
Yes, we actually do. We've worked with people in the past that are coming to us when the kids are just hitting high school. They're just now thinking about it, and they're like, what do I do? But a lot of times those folks are a little older. They're farther along in life. They've got more assets to be able to maneuver around and figure out what they're going to put towards college. We have, I guess, in our office, the beauty of being small town is that we actually have a lot of clientele that are, they've come to us via referral from their parents, their grandparents. And so when that happens, we work with a lot of people in their younger years when they're just getting started with their savings and they're just also starting their families. So we start talking to them early on about making sure that everything is in place and all their ducks are in a row to do what it is that they need to do and what their plans are. Because that's one of our first questions when we sit down with a young couple and are looking at a financial plan for them so that they can plan out a way to live but also save for their future retirement. Is, do you plan on helping with your child's college education? Because we've had some sit across from us and tell us, no, we did it on our own. We expect them to do it on their own. We've had others that are like, absolutely, but I want them to have some skin in the game. I want them to work towards it as well, so I'm not going to pay for the whole thing. And so when you look at that, you just got to figure out, okay, what's the best option for this client at this time?
I actually found some data that shows more parents are starting to make saving for their child's college education a priority. There was a Fidelity Investments 2024 College Savings Indicator study, and it found that 74% of parents have started setting money aside for college, which is up from 58% in 2007. Do you have any ideas as to why that might be?
Well, I personally, I really feel like over the past 20 years or so, our educational system has become geared more towards emphasizing that college importance. They offer college credit classes now, and they have for a number of years now, but that are instilling in those kids in those students while they're still in school, that need to get a further education so that they can have a decent lifestyle later on. And it's pushing those kids towards thinking about that future at a much earlier age than they did before. And I know there's also a number of high schools out there that are offering like work-study programs and career training that introduce those students to a career field that they may hold an interest in, get them started down that path of thinking about how to obtain that career at a much earlier age. I'm in an older generation myself, and honestly, I didn't have a whole lot of that from teachers and everything when I was in school. I was more, granted, I was in a farming community. I was pushed more towards looking at military and different types of blue-collar type jobs. Not that that's a bad thing. I mean, my husband and I have 5 kids between us, and our youngest daughter actually just graduated college, but the youngest son went the route of getting into a trade right after high school. And so we've got those two are they're very close in age. They're close knit to each other. They're complete opposites on their career path, if you will.
Right.
Granted, one's a girl and one's a boy, but we've got one that just graduated from college and one that I said went into a trade, and he's working for a construction company and doing very well for himself. But, at this point, he has no debt, whereas, like I said, she just graduated college and has a mountain of debt to work with.
Right, exactly. Did you and your husband kind of, is there any proactive steps that you guys took to kind of set aside money for college for them, or how did you approach that?
Well, the biggest thing there was the fact that she did a lot of college credit courses throughout high school and was able to work through that first year of school, primarily when she was still in high school, which didn't cost her anything as long as she actually passed the classes, which she did. And then she actually got a lot of grants and scholarships because she was a very good student. She was studious, and that goes back to the grooming the kids to have some skin in the game.
Right.
Teaching them, as they're growing, that it's not just going to come to you. You have to work towards it. And in such, within our plan, it was, okay, we can help with this, but you've got to do your part.
Right. Exactly.
And I think that went a long way towards her obtaining her goals.
Right. Exactly. Now, unfortunately, not all families can afford to help their children pay for college. Mm-hmm. What would you suggest for them? Like, what are some other options that lower income families can look into so that way college isn't off the table?
Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing that every student out there, whether they are going to be eligible for student aid or not, every student out there should be applying for FAFSA, which is the free application for federal student aid. And this is used to determine their eligibility for grants, scholarships, and loans. So I know throughout their high school, when they're gearing towards taking their SATs and the ACTs, this is talked about to the students, and they're all given all the information. Well, they have to go and they have to create an account, and this is something they have to do every single year. So you don't just do it once and then go off to college and say, okay, I'm done. I've done my FAFSA for the 4 years. No, it's every year you have to reapply for your FAFSA. And as I said, this determines your eligibility for those scholarships and grants. There are also work study programs and loans that the students can actually apply for. But the federal grants for college or trade school are eligible to students in lower income families, and there's multiple ones out there. And these are ones that, they have to apply through FAFSA first, and it determines their eligibility. But given their certain circumstances, they may be eligible for these grants that can wipe out a huge amount of that debt for them.
Right. I think, too, there's also like more non-conventional ways of approaching college, like maybe going to a community college for 1 or 2 years, which can be a little bit cheaper, and then transferring to, a university for a 4-year degree or something like that. I know I had some friends, like people who weren't even like sure what they wanted to go to school for would kind of start out in that community college space.
And that's a big thing too. I mean, when you look at the education that you're getting, some students are like, they've been groomed from the time they were young. They've got to go to the big, depending on what state you're in. Like I'm in Ohio, so it's Ohio State or UD. Everybody is like, these are the schools. This is where you want to be. Well, why do you want to go to that school? Because your parents and your grandparents or somebody else went there? Do you want to go there because they have the degree program that works best for you? That's what you need to be looking at, is what is your degree field that you're going into, and who has the best program at the best price.
So it's probably a good idea for parents and kids to kind of sit down once your kids get a little bit older and kind of start having that conversation of, do you want to go to college? What are you thinking of studying? Where would you want to go?
Absolutely.
Kind of thing. Instead of just kind of, this is a big school around here, so that's where you're going to go. Like, there needs to be more planning.
Yeah, and again, like I said, the planning needs to encompass, what is that career field you want to go into, and look into the different colleges that are within your area that offer that field, and look at their record on those. What's the percentage of students that are getting hired right out of school with that degree from that college? If this is the better school for that degree, and you've got a much higher job of coming out of it with a job in the end, then this is the one you should look at rather than the one over here that may have the sports team that you want to be able to go be a part of.
What do you suggest maybe for people who are like really struggling to pay back that debt now, like in their adult life, especially with our economy right now with inflation and high costs of living and salaries maybe not keeping up? Mm-hmm. What do you suggest for people who just feel really burdened by their college debt and don't know what to do?
Well, first of all, let's look at that debt coming out of school. There are, if they've taken out loans for their college debt, hopefully they've gotten the ones that nothing is due, throughout the time that they're still in school, where they've got 6 months after graduation before they have to start paying on them. But then they look at, most of these loans are going to have an income-driven repayment plan. And that's not to say that you have to turn around and pay everything within, a certain period of time and make huge payments, because if they're looking at what your current income is, they're going to base your payment plan on that. And hopefully it's going to be well within what you can actually afford. And I know in today's economy that can be hard. But there's other things to look at. Some careers out there actually have eligibility plans for relief. Social workers, teachers. There are social services things out there that if they've gone into that field, they do the necessary legwork to sign up and find out if they're eligible for these different credits and things that could be available to them. They can get into those programs, and over time, some of their debt can be erased because of the career field that they chose.
Now, we're not going to get too into politics here, but there has been a lot of talk. There has been a lot of talk about, making college free for everyone, or forgiving, these massive piles of debt for people. From a financial standpoint, do you ever see that happening?
Well, from a financial standpoint, first of all, let's break that apart a little bit. The first one you mentioned was making college free for everyone. When you do that, who's paying for it? Who's going to pay the teachers' salaries? Who's going to pay for the buildings and all of that? I understand that, that some of these schools are charging exorbitant amounts and that students are coming out with a lot of debt, but somebody down the road is going to be paying for that incomes of the teachers and all that. Are we going to make it a tax liability for everybody across the board? How's that going to work? Because, as I said before, someone's going to pay for it, if it's not the student.
So with the name of this podcast being Not Your Father's 2 Cents, I love to give listeners at the end of every episode, our 2 cents, if you will. So what advice do you have for families who may be struggling to save for college, or maybe don't know where to start, how early they should be starting to save? What's kind of your 2 cents on saving for college?
I think my 2 cents would be start as soon as you can. If your plan is to help your children, pay for college, start saving as soon as that first child is born. And it doesn't matter if it's putting aside, $10 a month into some type of a savings vehicle. Start small, build on it as you can. Don't put yourself in a hardship. If that's your goal, to work towards your child's education, do it a little at a time, because over time, a small amount is going to have the availability of compounding that interest between now and the time that they become the age that they're going to have to pay on their student loans. 23, 24 years old, when they're finally out of that 4-year degree. 20 years, 24 years that it's had to compound is going to be a very, sizable sum. Do what you can, but don't impede, your household finances. And by all means, don't blow up your retirement. If you've started later in life, or if you're a grandparent that is, nowadays there's a lot of grandparents raising their grandkids. And in that aspect, we've seen a lot of grandparents throw away their retirement to make sure their grandkids can go to college. It's needless to do that. Kids can get loans for college. You cannot get a loan for retirement.
Well, Lori, thank you so much for talking with me today. Where can people go to learn a little bit more about you and your firm?
They can find us online at outlookfc.com. Our phone number is 937-552-9990. We're here Monday through Friday and would love to speak with anybody.
All right, Lori, thank you so much for speaking with me today.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure.
All right, that'll do it for this edition. Sources used in this episode will be linked in the description, along with a link to Lori's website. Thank you for listening, and I'll meet you here next week.